in Chicago. I work for myself. Yeah, Chicago represent. I work for myself as a designer and a front-end developer. I learned today one of the 18% of women who actually work with code. Jen Myers told me that today earlier. So instead of showing you a lot of my work, I actually kind of want to talk about the process of like how to choose which projects are the right fit. I've been kind of going through this pattern of just kind of saying yes to everything and just kind of not really having a plan. So we're going to talk about how to have a plan. So let's go. So I don't know if you guys know Jennifer Daniel. She's speaking tomorrow. I think she's really awesome. She posted this hilarious tweet sometime last week. Basically, work-life balance. Yeah, so it's a mess, right? Total mess. So raise your hand if you feel like you have too much on your plate. Yeah, okay, everybody. Keep your hand up if you've pulled an all-nighter recently. Yes. How about more than one? Yes. Or what about the people who feel like maybe they have a good handle on their time, but maybe you don't really love the work that you're putting out, or you're not totally sure the direction that your work is taking you. So I want to talk about how to get through that. Because we do it all the time, again and again and again. I'm guilty of this. I'm partly just doing this talk with you today because it's a lesson I need to learn. So why does this keep happening? It's because yes is our default way of working. We're so used to just putting ourselves out there, just keeping the hustle. That's all we ever talk about is just working really hard all the time. We're all super passionate. That's why we're here in this room today. So it's, yes is flattery. Yes is instant gratification. Yes is glitter and chocolate fun sauce on top. We're all stuck in this constant go, 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 go loop, thinking the harder we push, the better our work is going to be and the happier we're going to get because the work is going to make us happy somehow. It doesn't work. And it's especially dangerous if you work for yourself like I do, or you have a side gig because you just balancing your time is pretty much impossible. So saying no is really hard. We all can agree on this, but when you're actually able to do it and be savvy and smart about it, it actually allows you to pursue your work and actually figure out the direction that you want to go. You're actually able to mold yourself and your work a lot better. So how do you start? And how? I've been trying to figure this out, thinking about this talk for the last couple of months. And the only way that I knew how to have this conversation with myself was to just get overwhelmed. You have to unpack your whole process and your whole business and your whole way of thinking about the world. It's really easy to get overwhelmed and just stop. So I've broken it down for us today. Get it a little easier, get it a little more palatable so you can actually use it and kind of roll with it as you go forward. So I like to call it getting your hustle straight and your commitment sorted. And to illustrate this, I have hand turkeys, right? So we all remember this, right? It's probably the first commissioned art project that we all do, right? If you think about it, right? It's super nostalgic. It's actually really meaningful. I was doing some research. People have been tracing their hands into birds since prehistoric times, which is pretty cool. But then it's also it comes with you everywhere you go. So once you kind of have your 5 things on your hand turkey kind of figured out, it's easy to remember, right? Because they're with you all the time. We all use our hands to work. You don't even really think about it. So hopefully it can just kind of become a part of you and you can kind of roll with it. So here's the hand turkey that I drew for us today, and the 5 points that I'm going to talk about: your brand, your hustle, how to define your profits, how to figure out your time, and the actual body of work itself. So 5 universal steps. I want you to tailor them to your own specifics. If you have specific questions about that you want to address later when we get to the end, that's super helpful, but everybody has such a different approach to working. I definitely am talking in broad strokes here today, but I want you to feel empowered to kind of take it and mold it and use it in your own way. The end goal for all of us: happier process, better confidence, and ideally a lot more sleep. So this is a process that it's more, it's a little more firm, but it's still flexible enough that you can kind of make it work with your needs as you go. So pinky finger. Defining your brand. So this is like such a cheesy buzzword. You can call it whatever you want in terms of like, oh, your creative ethos or your sort of personal approach to your work. We all have this, right? So everything, you're called to this field, you're called to make things. Why? What is it about your background and your life and your personality and your way of seeing the world? We all talk about, making for you, don't try and model someone else's style. Like, yeah, you have to do that and you have to make it official. You can't just have this sort of like happy feeling in your gut. Write it down, do a project about it, put it out there in the world, explain it through your work if you can, because then you can refer back to it. If you're me, you write it. Because there's going to be projects that come along that challenge your way of working, that challenge your brand, that try and get you out of that. And you think you live it all the time, you'll remember it, but you won't. So that's why committing it to a piece of paper or something will allow you to kind of really internalize it in a more specific way than you already are. So for me, my approach and sort of my brand starts with this ampersand, right? When I first started studying design, it was the first thing that I would draw. I didn't even think about it. I was studying typography, and the ampersand is such like a wacky, silly little character, and it was the first place that I would look at in all of the characters and all the alphabets to kind of figure out like what are the nuances of that specific font. How does it work? What are the characteristics of that the whole face? And then eventually it just became the first thing that I would ever think of to sort of doodle and sketch. So in my notes, they're everywhere. And it didn't actually occur to me that this was like a unique or different thing until I got laid off. I got laid off from my corporate design job in 2008 and just kind of was like, well, I'm gonna work for myself. Let's see how that goes. So that was 4 years ago, and I haven't really looked back, but I really, at the beginning of my freelance career, I wanted to make this into something more serious. So I started this project called And the Typeface, and I commissioned 26 different illustrators and designers to design their own sort of specific ampersand. And then, so this had two benefits. First of all, it created the project in a more meaningful way to me. Obviously, this ampersand was speaking to me. It took me to actually like notice it and actually do it and, bring it back intentionally into my work in order for it to make a difference. It got me to communicate with several of my design heroes, some of whom are here today, which is really awesome, including Tad. That's his ampersand up in the corner. He's next. So yeah, this ampersand was speaking to me. I actually had to stop and listen to it, and then it told me something about myself and how it is I work. So this project culminated in 2 gallery shows. This one was put on by Janine Van Gool, who runs Uppercase Gallery in Calgary, Canada. And then I did my own version of it in Chicago at Typeforce, the first ever Typeforce show in 2010, where I screen printed all of the ampersands that everyone had submitted on these collages, and I filled up a whole table with them, sort of interactive display. And there's also posters for the show for sale as well if you're into the ampersands. So that's how I figured, okay, this is my brand. Now people know me as the ampersand lady, right? So that's great. That's one part of how my work translates that, but this is my actual brand statement. So I refuse to settle for design merely as decoration. My best work comes when I run my own process with clients and collaborators who are rooted in the same progressive values and cultural growth that I am. I also require time to maintain a blog because of the empowerment it gives me and my readers. So do this for yourselves, right? Step 2, how you hustle. So you can have the most amazing origin story and the most well-crafted brand statement and the most really well-thought-out approach to your work and how you make it, but until you get it in front of the right people and until you learn how to talk about it correctly, it's for nothing. So right people in the right places. It's easy to put your work online, but you don't really know who's seeing it, right? So actually taking some care, looking at your analytics, or pitching it to people whose work you admire and want to work for, as opposed to just letting the work come to you, right? That's basically the approach that I have right now, is I just people email me and I don't know where they come from sometimes, and being more proactive about starting that conversation on your own because you want the right fit, right? You want to work with people who mirror you in the best way possible. So, and then once you do that, you have to be able to talk about your process, right? So, what is your process? People are going to try and talk you out of it all the time. Clients love to do this. Mike Montero's book, Design is the Job. Anyone? Like, that's mandatory reading, right? If you haven't done so, that's definitely, like, I would say the best design book out there right now. Clients love to kind of test you on this, right? Because this is how they figure out how confident you are, and they want it cheaper. So they're going to ask for less hours. They're going to ask for you to cut down on your research. They're going to ask for whatever X, Y, and Z. So being able to explain why your process is why it is, and be confident about it, and just being frank. And you know, if they don't, that's a red flag, and that's something that you now know that you can say no to, right? So the whole point of these steps is to give you information so that when you put it out there, if you don't get the response that you need, that's the point where you take yourself out of the collaboration, or you know, part ways in the nicest way possible. But you know, sometimes it just isn't a fit. So once you have your process down and you're selling it, you have to follow through on that. No, you know, no changing in the middle of the project. No sort of last-minute curveballs. That's what the contract is for. Clients trust you to do what you tell them, right? So it's obvious, but it's really easy to do. And then at the end, you have to have an exit strategy. This is a really tough one for me, you know, especially if a project's really awesome, you kind of want it to keep going forever, but ultimately, like, the goals will change, or you get tired of it, or you just get distracted or sort of less enthused because you know, you've been with it for a while. So giving yourself an exit is the best way to, you know, end it on a positive note, but then just keep your plate and keep yourself moving, right? So you don't want to have things like lingering in the background, these sort of like half-finished projects or things that are waiting for feedback, and you know, they're still on your plate. You still have to devote some sort of brain power to it, even if it's not actually an active project, right? So the more people trust you with this, and the more respect you foster, the more they're going to value your work, and the more you actually can charge. So that's pretty awesome, right? So you're not actually selling in the sense of, like, you know, used car dealership, like, it's valuable, it's genuine, and you're not taking someone for a ride, and they believe you for that. And then in the end, you are your network, right? So all of you, which is awesome, but you guys don't really pay me, so you have to foster that outside of your sort of creative allies. And you know, if you have a client or someone you really like butting heads with, like, that's your network. That's what your daily life is like. So, you know, taking care to really, like, you have to cultivate that. We all know that, I know, but serves a reminder. Yes, so, sounds good. Middle finger, right? The fuck money. I don't know why we all hate to talk about it so much, despite the fact that it runs our lives. And it's a process, kind of learning about it and getting comfortable with it. But bottom line, a lot of your decisions are going to revolve around it. So if you don't know what's coming in and what's going out and when and how, sometimes it's hard to make decisions and hard to say no to things, because you see the flashy dollar signs and you think, oh, I can work this in, or sounds great, let's do it, even though it may have some, like, really big red flags in other places. So having a sense of, like, what your financial status is and how it's working for you is a really good way of trying to figure out what projects to take on, especially the free ones. Those are the ones that I get snagged with all the time, because they're amazing and they're totally open-ended, and you have so much creative freedom, which is, like, paralyzing in a sense, because they're so open-ended. You can do kind of whatever you want for free. So it's tricky, and you can see how you can get yourself into trouble with that. How you negotiate money is huge, right? That's probably a whole talk in itself. We could talk about. But until you're actually comfortable laying down your budgets with ease and kind of just put it out there, people are going to push back and ask you to kind of lower it and put, you know, and that goes back to the process too. Like, you have to have a solid reason for why you are asking for that kind of money. And it's super scary. I I highly recommend that you actually role play this out with someone who has, you know, like, just like you were like in school or whatever, find a teacher or find someone who will actually do like a mock salary negotiation with you, or some sort of a mock like freelance contract negotiation. They have slightly different goals and like processes, but actually like getting comfortable saying the words, and this is what I require and why. And then once you actually get good at it, it's kind of fun. It's really kind of fun. And to watch people respond to that and think, oh, this girl, she knows what she's doing, because she's confident, and it sells your work better, and again, builds the trust. So, get the cheese. So, all right, number 4, this is time management. So messy. I don't know. This one I think is even bigger sticking point for me than the actual profit one, because I'm a creative. I like a fluid schedule. I set my own hours. I can stay up all night if I want to. I'll just sleep in tomorrow. No big deal, right? No, who cares? So the parts that I always forget about when I'm faced with a new project or something is coming down the pipeline is that I forget that it's gonna take the place of something else. So what am I gonna give up if I say yes to this thing? A lot of times I never think about that, and then things start slipping, and I start dropping off on posting on my blog or posting on other people's blogs, because that's like usually the first thing that goes. But why? And why do I feel okay saying yes to that, knowing that I'm already going to be neglecting another commitment? And part of that is that even though I'm checking my calendar constantly, things shift all the time, right? So being able to to zoom out and kind of look at your plate from like a totally big picture standpoint, you know, asking yourself these questions is going to help you figure out if you have the time to take on these new things, and if you don't, like, shit, maybe you're already really overworked. What can go? What do you need to cut so that you can work more easily and breathe more easily? There's going to be signs you're probably already familiar with, your sort of breaking points when you're working too fast, or you're working really tired, or you're really like, maybe you're really in love with what it is you're doing, but you know, files get missed, or that it's the wrong file format, or something like that. For me, like, I just got tired of like apologizing for things that weren't my fault because I was too busy and didn't send things at the right time, or there was whatever, you know. Don't allow that to become your mode of working. You're always, you know, you'll get used to that, and then it will be that's what people will know you for too. So it'll own you if you let it. You can't. And that goes hand in hand with taking time off. I have a terrible time with this. Terrible. Taking time off feels like I'm cheating. I run my own business, so when I'm not working, I'm not only not billing hours, but I'm usually spending time. So it's almost like I'm paying for things twice, right? So it's really easy to get stuck in this loop of like, oh, money, you know, running your time, running your hours. And it's kind of like, oh, it's self-indulgent. Oh, I just had a vacation like last year. Why do I need one this year? You know, like, but like, what's lame about not going crazy? Like, that's, you know, duh, right? But the most important thing is that you never will innovate. Your work will never grow if you're tired, or if you're exhausted, or if you're spread too thin, because at that point you're just trying to get through it as fast as possible, and you're never doing your best work. So that's what you got to focus on. Ask yourself these questions so that you can figure out what you can trim, right? So finally, the actual work itself, like, you would think this would be the first thing, right? Because the work is what gets you more work, or, you know, that's what people know you for. That's why you get to come to conferences like this and talk about your crazy awesome poster that you designed. But the fact is that the work comes after everything else, right? So if you don't know what your brand's about, you're going to end up doing projects that you're not in love with. You're going to end up doing projects that, you know, maybe are for, I don't know, tobacco companies or something that sometimes is like maybe diametrically opposed to what it is you stand for, just because of the budgets. If your profits and your money's a mess, you're going to end up, you know, getting swayed by that. If your time management is crazy, your work is going to suffer, right? Like, it's really obvious, but the fact is we all want more time for our work. We all want to be focusing more on that. So the point is that you have to get your other 4 fingers straight in order to give your work the actual time and breathing room that it needs to get to that bigger point, that better point, right? So, in the end, this is just a guide, right? we all sort of live as if we're driving a car on a dark road. We can't really see that far ahead of us at any given time. We don't really know the terrain that's coming up ahead. But the hand turkey is the headlights, right? It'll tell you where the potholes are. It'll tell you where the wrong turns are. It'll tell you where the dead ends are. And you might not know until you're kind of already on that path, but you'll be able to see it and hopefully kind of turn the car back around and get back on track, right? So it's definitely not as exact as GPS. It's not a map, but frankly, perfectionism is kind of a bummer, right? Like, perfectionism is a party pooper, and you don't want him at your birthday party. So, at the end, after that, you think about this, there's no more need to sharpen your pencils anymore. Your hand turkey is done, and it's time to make the work. The pencils, they're sharp enough. The dull ones will still make a mark, warts and all. You gotta start your shit up. And dear God, let's make it fun. Life isn't just a sequence of waiting for things to be over. Thank you. If anybody has any like specific money things or budget things. Yes?
I wonder if you could make your presentation, maybe a blog post or something.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, just hard to memorize.
For sure. Yeah. Yes.
I was wondering if you could maybe give an example of what you might, like how you might have the conversation with a client, particularly somebody who's maybe worked with before or is like ongoing.
So like when it is time to like change our setup, like, so usually if you're a freelancer, you know, you have a project, there's an end in sight, you've set up your budgets and everything's done, you know, okay, maybe this isn't going so well, or there's been surprises along the way. Sometimes I just won't work with them again. Like, that's a way of saying no, is to just not continue to that, you know, just move on and find the next thing, right? But occasionally, clients will hire me because they don't know anyone else, or they don't want to go looking for another designer, so they'll continue to kind of approach me about work and about projects, and it's maybe the relationship is strained on both sides, or we're kind of not into it. Like, you can definitely sense like when things are kind of going south. So what I usually do, instead of like having that like you're fired conversation, because that's like not the kind of, like, that falls under my like sort of brand, how I sort of, when I want to change the context of how I work with people, I just would say, okay, let's take a break for a while. Like, you know, let's meet up again in 6 months and talk about our process and talk about the budgets and kind of reframe it. So you kind of pause it and then step back, get some perspective on how you can do it better, and then you want to keep the relationship open, because firing someone burns a bridge, right? And especially in Chicago, it's a small enough city that people are going to talk about that. And the last thing I want is to foster any kind of ill will about my work and how I do my business. And if the client isn't happy with my work, and you know, they can kind of tell that I'm not into it, or I'm sort of just like whipping it out, like, I want to do right by that. So by taking a break, stepping back, and then coming back into it, I leave us both, you know, no one has to get hurt feelings, and then both of us have the opportunity to kind of like modify our relationship, because, you know, once you're already in a project, it's kind of habit, right? So taking a step back allows you to kind of change it. So, anybody else? Yes?
Consult a lawyer or someone for tax or financial?
I think that's like the best investment. Best investment you can. I definitely have an accountant. I'm not a numbers person, really. I like code, but that's different. So yeah, I mean, accountant and lawyer will save you so much money in the end, like in the grand scheme of things, that it's definitely worth having them just run your contract by them, and they'll be able to give you some pointers. Most of them, especially if they're working with artists or other sort of small businesses, it's really not that expensive. Like, their hourly rate is maybe only a little higher than mine, so it's really like, it seems like intimidating to go out and seek that level of professional help, but the benefit that you're going to get is totally going to offset that. So make it any chance you get, definitely.
This is right too.
Yeah, oh yeah, totally, for sure. So yeah.
How do you make the transition, how would you suggest you make the transition from work that pays your bills to finding work that fits your brand, that of course then in turn pays your bills?
I think that's all about finding the right people who have the pocketbooks, who do the things that you want to do. And that takes a long time, especially because you don't always know what a good fit is with someone until you're working with them. Like, a working relationship is really intimate in a way. Like, it's a lot like dating, I think, in terms of like the weird parts that people reveal about themselves. Like, they have no idea sometimes. But yeah, that's all about seeking out those people, and you sometimes have to be the one to like start that conversation, like pitch your work to them. Say, you know, and maybe you don't exactly what their budgets are like or what their, you know, what's in their pocketbooks, but that's why having a really strong statement about the type of work that you want to do will help you, because even if you're not doing it today, you can put it on the back burner for later and keep your eyes open for when that opportunity is going to come knocking, because when it does, you're going to have to take it and you're going to have to, you know, get rid of something else to accommodate it. So
Yeah, that's a good point, because like you made the comment about the yes. So the yes of doing what pays the bills fills up the time that you don't have to create your brand or find the projects that fit your desire that you want to do, which truly makes you happy.
exactly.
But that's the truth.
Anybody else? Yeah.
So, if someone just like cold calls you, like how do you work through that process of figuring out if they're a good that you have a questionnaire or how do you
Yes,
work with them?
yes, and in fact, Design as a Job comes with a really awesome, just a very general questionnaire, because a lot of times people will come to me and be like, I want a website, and I'm like, well, cool. That's do you have any more information you can tell me? So usually there's like a pretty extensive like questioning process at the beginning to kind of like really assess where they're coming from and really what they're asking for, because you don't understand the problem, they don't understand the problem. It's usually, you know, much later that you actually are at, okay, I know what I can offer you and I can offer you this. So, you know, structuring your time and your other hourly rate so you can accommodate this sort of back and forth with them before you have any work, before you sign anything, just a consulting session. Like, let's just talk about this, you know, sit down and have a meeting with them and get a better sense of it. Usually that's enough. And then, you know, keep your eyes out for, you know, do they push back on your budget? Do they try and talk you out of how you like to work? Like, big red flag, big time red flag. Other things like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good example of like when I had a client like totally just, whoa. But the thing is that how they respond to your questions is going to tell you a lot about how they work and how they think. And if you don't like their answer, probably that's a really good sign that they're not a great fit. So, and if you're in the business of creating opportunities for yourself, like there's going to be more. So saying no to something and walking away from it doesn't mean there's not going to be anything after that. If you've already managed to do that, just keep going. Just keep going. And just that's the part when it is about keeping going, is just moving on to the next thing, right? So that's where I really do think that it's better to just like cut your losses as quick as you can and just dive into the next thing. So, yeah.
When you find a project that you really love and you really want to do it, but they just do not have it in your budget to pay you anything close to what you want, but you want to be a part of it, do you just do it anyway, if you got the time, I guess?
It depends on who's asking, I think, in that scenario. If it's someone I don't know, probably not. But if it's someone I have a relationship with who's coming from me from my network, I will want to make time for that. Because I care about them as a person versus like a total random stranger. But sometimes it's just like the timeline just doesn't work, you know? And that's where being like really honest with yourself about your schedule and your other commitments is a really good thing to do. So yeah, in that case I think it really is all about who's asking, you know? So yeah.
So when you say no, do you just like hang up the phone afterwards?
No, I like to like I said, I like to leave the conversation open. Like, I treat it more as like a pause, or like we're gonna kind of put this on the table for now. I would like to work, you know, offer them other opportunities, or if it's a scenario where I don't have time, I will suggest someone else. Because the point is that they're gonna feel kind of bummed, and it reflects badly on me if I'm just like no, you know. Offering them something in return, like I can't offer you this, but I can offer you Y, or you know, I would love to do this with you, but you know, call me in a month, kind of thing. Most of the time they don't, but at least you offered them something, right? So yeah, so that's what you can do is kind of trying to offset that a little bit.
Regarding the vacation time, do you, like, reschedule that and it's like mark or cut in stone date, or is it as, or do you wait till that something
That's what I do right now, but I think I should do it more officially. Like, because then it's like I can give my clients a heads up more and say, okay, I'm not falling off the face of the earth for the next 10 days or whatever it is. Like, they know I can give them a heads up at the beginning of the project. I'm going to be out of town for X number of, this is already pre-scheduled. Tells them that I'm organized too. So, yeah, I'll do that. Should we do it? Maybe one more? Yeah?
Have you ever had to navigate, like, saying no to somebody who is in your network, you have a relationship, you don't believe in it?
Nope, I've never done that. Because I say no all the time, or I say yes all the time, just like all of us do. But I think it would have to be like a pretty serious extenuating circumstance and something that they would understand and be cool with. I think if you know me as a person, that, we have a relationship in real life that isn't just like through the computer. Like, people are pretty understanding and they already know what I'm doing, so I don't think I would hurt someone's feelings in that sense, but I would be really sad to say no, and so that's never actually happened. But anyway, I'm around, so let me know if you guys have any more questions. I'd love to talk. So thank you so much.